Welcome to aquatic biology. Imagine a lake as a giant, living bowl of soup. Just like soup has a specific temperature, thickness, and mix of ingredients that make it taste right, a lake has physical and chemical properties that determine what kind of life can survive in it. These properties act as the invisible rules governing every living creature in the water. Today, we will explore these fundamental characteristics and learn how to measure them. Let us begin with our first physical characteristic, light. Imagine driving through heavy fog with your headlights on. The light does not travel far because water droplets scatter it. In a lake, sunlight behaves the exact same way when it hits suspended particles. This cloudiness is called turbidity. Why does this matter? Because sunlight is the engine of the lake. Aquatic plants and phytoplankton rely entirely on this penetrating light to perform photosynthesis, producing the oxygen that fish need to breathe. If a lake becomes too turbid, light cannot reach the deeper plants, causing them to die and disrupting the entire food web. Now that we understand why light penetration is crucial, let us look at how we measure it. This brings us to the Beer-Lambert law. Conceptually, this formula models how light decays exponentially as it travels through a medium like water. I sub z represents the remaining light intensity at a specific depth. I sub 0 is the initial light hitting the surface. The letter E is the base of the natural logarithm, modeling continuous decay. The variable k is the attenuation coefficient, which tells us how quickly light is absorbed. Finally, z is the depth in meters. If the water becomes more turbid, k increases, causing the light intensity to drop much faster as you go deeper. Before we move on, let us see this formula in action with a concrete example. We are studying a clear lake where the surface light intensity is 1,000 units. The attenuation coefficient is 0.5 per meter, and we want to find the light available at a depth of 2 meters. We plug our known values into the Beer-Lambert law. First, we multiply the attenuation coefficient by the depth, giving us -1 in the exponent. Evaluating e to the power of -1 gives us approximately 0.368. Finally, multiplying this by our initial 1,000 units gives us 368. Physically, this means about 37% of the surface light reaches the 2-meter mark, which is plenty for algae to thrive. Having explored light, we now turn to another physical barrier: temperature. Have you ever jumped into a lake in summer and felt warm water at the surface but freezing cold water near your toes? This is thermal stratification. It happens because water changes its density depending on its temperature. The warmest, lightest water floats at the top in a layer called the epilimnion. At the bottom lies the hypolimnion, made of cold, heavy water, typically around 4 degrees Celsius. Between them is the thermocline, a zone where temperature drops extremely rapidly. These layers do not mix easily, creating isolated worlds within the same lake, which profoundly affects where fish can swim and where oxygen is available. To scientifically locate this invisible barrier, we calculate the thermal gradient. Conceptually, this formula measures the rate at which temperature drops as you move deeper into the water. G represents the thermal gradient. Delta T is the change in temperature between a deeper point and a shallower point, measured in degrees Celsius. Delta Z is the physical distance between those two depths, in meters. By definition, a thermocline exists wherever the absolute value of this gradient is greater than or equal to 1 degree Celsius per meter. If the temperature difference increases over a very small depth, the gradient becomes steep. indicating a very strong and stable stratification barrier. Let us apply this formula to find the thermocline in a real lake. We measure the water temperature at 4 meters deep and find it is 20 degrees Celsius. Just 1 meter deeper, at 5 meters, it drops sharply to 16 degrees. We need to calculate the gradient. First, we find the temperature change by subtracting the shallower temperature from the deeper one, giving us -4 degrees. The negative sign simply means it is getting colder. Next, the depth change is exactly 1 meter. Dividing -4 by 1 gives us a gradient of -4 degrees Celsius per meter. Since the absolute value, 4, is much greater than 1, we have definitively located the thermocline. This is a massive density barrier preventing water from mixing. Now that we have calculated the thermocline, let us visualize what this actually looks like. Here we have a depth versus temperature graph. Notice the vertical axis represents depth, going deeper as you move down, while the horizontal axis shows temperature. The red line is our temperature profile. In the top blue section, the epilimnion, the temperature stays consistently warm. But look at the middle section, the metalimnion, or thermocline. The red line swings drastically to the left, showing a rapid drop in temperature over a very short depth. Finally, in the deep hypolimnion, the temperature stabilizes again at a cold 4 degrees. This diagram perfectly illustrates how a single lake is split into distinct, isolated worlds. Moving from physical to chemical characteristics, we arrive at the literal lifeblood of the lake, dissolved oxygen, or DO. Imagine sitting in a stuffy room with closed windows. Eventually, it becomes hard to breathe. Fish face a similar challenge. They rely on invisible, free oxygen gas dissolved between water molecules. This oxygen enters the lake through diffusion from the atmosphere and as a byproduct of plant photosynthesis. Interestingly, cold water can hold significantly more oxygen than warm water. Every aerobic organism requires a constant supply of this dissolved oxygen to survive. If pollution causes bacteria to consume all the oxygen, a deadly condition called hypoxia occurs, leading to massive fish kills. To understand exactly how much oxygen can dissolve into the water, we use Henry's law. Conceptually, this law states that the amount of dissolved gas is directly proportional to the pressure of that gas in the air above the liquid. In our formula, C represents the concentration of the dissolved oxygen in the water. The symbol K sub H is Henry's law constant, which is a specific value that changes depending on the water's temperature. Finally, P represents the partial pressure of oxygen in the atmosphere. If the atmospheric pressure increases, it physically pushes more oxygen into the water, increasing the concentration C. Conversely, if the water heats up, the constant drops and the lake loses oxygen. Let us calculate the theoretical dissolved oxygen in a mountain lake using this law. We are given the partial pressure of oxygen in the atmosphere as 0.21 atmospheres. At the current water temperature, Henry's law constant is 1.3 times 10 to the negative third. We want to find the exact concentration of oxygen available for the fish. We simply multiply the constant by the partial pressure. Setting it up this way ensures the atmosphere units cancel out perfectly. Multiplying these two numbers gives us 0.000273. This final answer is the molarity of the dissolved oxygen. While it looks like a tiny decimal, this is actually a standard, healthy baseline of oxygen to support a thriving aquatic ecosystem. Our final chemical characteristic involves nutrients and dissolved solids. Think of a lake as a giant garden. Just as you add nitrogen and phosphorus to soil to grow tomatoes, lakes contain natural dissolved phosphates and nitrates that feed aquatic plants. In most freshwater lakes, phosphorus is the limiting nutrient, meaning its natural scarcity keeps algae growth in check. However, when human activities dump excess fertilizers or sewage into the water, it triggers a dangerous process called eutrophication. This chemical enrichment transforms a crystal-clear oligotrophic lake into a murky green body of water, choked with explosive algal blooms. When these blooms die, decomposing bacteria consume all the oxygen, creating deadly dead zones. To manage this threat, we must mathematically quantify the lake's health using Carlson's Trophic State Index for phosphorus. Conceptually, this formula translates exponential biological growth into a simple linear scale from 0 to 100. TSI stands for the Trophic State Index. The formula uses the natural logarithm, represented by ln, to compress a wide range of nutrient concentrations. TP represents the concentration of total phosphorus in the water, measured in micrograms per liter. As the total phosphorus increases, the natural logarithm increases. This causes the overall TSI score to rise, which physically indicates a more polluted, overgrown, and biologically unstable lake. Let us evaluate a lake located near a large agricultural farm to see this index in practice. Water samples reveal a total phosphorus concentration of 50 micrograms per liter. We need to calculate the TSI to see if fertilizer runoff has damaged the lake. First, we take the natural logarithm of 50, which a calculator tells us is approximately 3.912. Next, we substitute this value back into our main equation, multiplying it by the scaling factor of 14.42. This gives us 56.41. Finally, we add the constant 4.15, yielding a final TSI score of 60.56. Because any score above 50 indicates a highly enriched, eutrophic lake, this tells us the ecosystem is in severe danger from agricultural runoff. We have covered a tremendous amount of ground today. Let us review the most important ideas. First, sunlight is the engine of the lake, and we can precisely track its penetration using the Beer-Lambert law. Second, temperature differences create powerful physical barriers called thermoclines, stratifying the lake into isolated zones. Third, dissolved oxygen is the invisible breath of the ecosystem, governed by Henry's law and vital for all aquatic animals. Finally, maintaining the delicate balance of nutrients, like phosphorus, is critical to prevent toxic eutrophication. By mastering these physico-chemical characteristics, you now hold the foundational tools to understand, monitor, and protect our precious aquatic ecosystems.